Welcome back to the Jack Swarbrick Show. Our next guest brings 24 years of head coaching experience to his first season as the head coach of the Notre Dame women's volleyball team. Jim McLaughlin has led 19 teams to NCAA tournament appearances during his head coaching career and guided 2 of those teams to national championships. He also owns the unique distinction of being the only coach to lead both a men's and women's team to NCAA titles. This is a homecoming of sorts for Jim, who has many previous ties to Notre Dame, which I am sure Jack and Joe will talk to Coach McLaughlin about over the course of the next 12 minutes or so. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thanks very much. Coach, thanks for being with us. I know this is the middle of your season, so we appreciate you taking a little time out for this. You know, Joe, this may have been the most intense recruiting effort I've ever been involved in, trying to get Jim to come here.
I actually heard a lot about the recruiting process through the grapevine in the training room. There were little bits and pieces just being whispered about that we might be getting the great, the one, the only Jim McLaughlin. So, I mean, it's great to have you here on campus.
I appreciate it, Joe and Jack. And it was a great process, one that I love being part of. And as I went through it, the meaning became clearer and clearer. And this is a great place in many ways. And I'm honored to be part of it.
You know, we always say in football recruiting that if you can get the mom, right, you're in a good position.
Oh yeah.
Our target was a little different here. We had a little inside help with Jim's wife, who has strong athletic connections to Notre Dame that you might want to discuss.
Well, I don't know if anybody can love Notre Dame more than my wife, and I've seen over the years as she's been away from it, her the passion, the love is even deeper. I didn't believe everything she told me, Jack, about this place, but now that I'm here, I'm seeing it, I'm living it, and she was right. It's a fantastic place that can impact anybody at a high level.
And she was a national champion here, right?
She won a championship. I saw him do it. I saw him beat North Carolina in soccer, and the pictures are up at home, and it's a neat thing to remember.
So were you here? Were you working on campus? How exactly did this all happen? Tell us a little bit about your first stint here as an Irishman.
Well, Joe, I was making the transition to coach, going from men to coach women, and I wanted to really know if my methods were true in terms of having a great deal of transfer with men and women, and that's the deal as a teacher. So I had the opportunity, Debbie gave me an opportunity to come here and run the defensive side of volleyball. I approached it the same way. The principles were the same. You talk to women a little bit differently, but volleyball is volleyball. The movements are the same, the eye work's the same, the methods are the same. And so we got a good return. The team was the number 1 blocking team in the nation. Wow. We ended up losing in the NCAA tournament, but at the end of the day, I thought, hey, this is a great deal. Women can work extremely hard. Women can be leaders. And so it was a good deal for me.
You probably take as scientific an approach to your craft as any coach we have at Notre Dame. How has that evolved over time? How has your approach to teaching the sport changed and evolved?
Well, you get better in this field. You're asking these kids to invest at a higher level and commit at a higher level and to bring energy at a certain level, to have a focus. And as a teacher and a coach, you have to continually improve also. I just didn't want to go through life wondering and feeling things. Feelings come and go. I wanted to grab onto things and make sure we were in the right areas and make an improvement in those areas. So I know that I have a limited ability to process complex information, as most people do. So what you see is what you want to see, and I wanted to make sure we were seeing the right things. And so if we're measuring things, what gets measured gets managed, what gets managed gets done. We could make step towards an end in mind, and I could share it with my players. And when you start making improvement, and it becomes, when you learn how to learn, it becomes almost addictive. And we've got to meet some standards with great regularity, and you got to train at reality. And so it's just work for me.
You measure literally everything in a practice, right?
Well, you have to. You have to know everything, but there's too many everythings. And so you got to be, working on, if you're everywhere, you're nowhere. And so we got to make sure we're in the right areas every day we approach practice. And the kids are starting to have the right approach. And right now, I don't care who we play, when we play, where we play, but if we can bring that focus, the energy, and that preparation every time we take the floor, we have a chance to just make progress. And if you don't, it can unravel very fast. Doesn't matter. You get exposed. And so the girls are starting to understand it and buy into it at a higher level.
So I think what we're getting to is almost to the hot word right now is analytics and whatever it is, sabermetrics or any kind of metrics, right? You seem to be on the very forefront in volleyball, and from what I've heard and what I've gathered, it seems to be the case. How did you kind of develop this process? You say you measure everything, but maybe for our listeners, they wouldn't even know what you measure and how you measure it. So, as someone who's kind of a pioneer in this regard, can you kind of just talk a little bit about maybe and not obviously giving away secrets, but just a little bit about the background of kind of coming up with this idea?
Well, we develop a big rock list. There's 3-4 things we have to get in place. And as I've gone through coaching, I see coaches that they put out fires. And I believe if you build things, get things in place, you cover all the things that you have to. Your system and your training is all encompassing. You're going to get things in place. But you got to measure those things. And early in my career, coming from the men's game, blocking is a coefficient that weights very high. And so you got to invest in those things. And I was at Kansas State, and we went from 8th in the conference to number 2 in terms of blocks per game. But our defense was 6th. And a very smart guy, one of my mentors, who's 80 years old now, and he's a PhD in motor learning, said, you're spending too much time in this area, not enough time in this area. But then he gave me some numbers that supported and defended what he was telling me. It wasn't just his feeling. And so we looked at a correlation matrix and saw how the skills related to winning. And the trends change, Joe, every year, and teams are different. And so every team, you have to spend the right amount of time in the right places with that specific team. And so we ended up giving more opportunities to respond to different situations on the defensive side. Our digs per game went up, our blocks went down. We finished 2nd in the conference. And the next year, we reorganized our thoughts, looked at how we did everything, put together another list, and won the conference. Wow. And so, you have to look at the numbers the right way. And so, that's a challenge every year to make sure we are doing the right things for our kids.
You mentioned earlier the sort of the culture taking root and having to do that. A lot of evidence that that's occurring. Joe and I were in Virginia, but it felt like a good weekend in terms of starting to move forward like you and I have been talking about. Give us your assessment of where the team is now.
Well, I just watch the behavior every day, and if you study behavior closely, you can generally tell how people are thinking. And for me, that's the deal. That's what separates people. I don't think it's this genetic makeup. It's, having your core values in place. It's being a Notre Dame volleyball player at the highest degree. And there's a way you need to behave in all areas, on and off the court. But the behavior is becoming more natural. There's so much more out there right now, Jack, and I think the kids understand that. But we're moving in the right direction. And when you start to get a little bit of a return, the kids start to grab onto that even more. They're in my office now going, hey, what else can I do? But you go through some growing pains and you shift how people think. So the conditions also consist of how people think and their emotions. And if you're thinking appropriately, then your emotions are generally in line, and you have to have those emotions to learn. We're learning how to learn. We're learning how to make changes. The first part of winning is about changing in practice. And then are we changing in a manner that we can retain it on game day? When it gets really gnarly on game day and it's tough, can we execute these movements and stay focused on the things that tell us what to do? That's all part of the culture, I think.
Well, I know that you've spent some time with the respective football programs at the, as a football player, I have to ask these questions, with the respective football programs at the schools that you've been at in the past. And I know that you came to a couple of our practices so far, spent some time with the Browns. But exactly, when you go to these events, are you looking at how, like, a football team, or even if you go to another sport, are you examining kind of their processes too and maybe incorporating them into your own, or are you just going just to kind of check out how the football team works? But or I just was kind of curious if you find anything that you can kind of bring over from what we do to what you do.
Yeah, I'm learning all the time, and I think you can learn from anybody. But when I go into it, the NFL does it better than anybody. It's unbelievable how you guys operate, how college programs operate. But I like to go in and see, are these coaches, what are the routines? What are the activities? Are they following the laws of learning relative to football or volleyball? What's the feedback like? Is it meaningful? When are these coaches giving feedback? I listened to our offensive line coach. Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And he was out there before anybody. I got to get close enough to really hear the meaningful feedback. And then I saw the reaction of the players and how they were absorbing that feedback and then making the adjustments. I could see it. It was happening. And so I was inspired by what that man was doing. And then just the activities, the crispness, no wasted time. It was efficient. It was business as usual. And then I watched you guys go over when you took a break and how the team interacted. Those things are what make people great. It's about conditions and mentorship and all that stuff. So I'm learning all the time, and I'm trying to steal stuff from people.
Coach, thrilled to have you on the show. Thrilled to have you as a member of the Notre Dame family. We look forward to a long and successful tenure here. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was fascinating. Thank you.
I appreciate it. It's a great place.
We'll be back in a minute.